This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over the white scaling on your tile line and on your spa spillway. I'm going to explain to you what that actually is. And it is scaling, yes, but there are different levels and different terminology to kind of classify the level of scaling on your pool water line, tile area, and spa spillway, water features, anywhere in the pool where it's above the water, where you get this scaling, and you'll get a better idea, of course, after I unpack it here. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. And as I mentioned, this scale can be anywhere from your spa spillway, which is very common, or your tile line or the water line in the pool. And it definitely is scaling, and it is something that is somewhat preventable, but it's not always preventable all the time. As far as, you get a pool built and everything looks beautiful, and then you get some of this white buildup, and you figure that, you would never have this problem with your pool. You never had a pool before and you're kind of confused of what this could be, or you're providing pool service to someone who has a new build and they're asking you all these questions about the white buildup that's forming. It happens, of course, because the water is a little bit oversaturated with minerals due to an imbalance in the LSI, high pH, high alkalinity, or really high calcium hardness. And so what happens is that when the heat hits the tile area where the water splashes on, this is why the spa spillway is a classic example of this white calcium buildup. And usually it's like in the pattern of the water flow over the spa spillway. It's because once it gets heated up by the sun and then it evaporates, it kind of causes it to fall out or plate out onto the tile and stick there. And it could happen within like weeks of a new pool build. Even days of it, I've seen it happen within days of a new build. And depending on how hard your water is and how out of balance the water is. Now you can identify it with an acid test. And of course, do this cautiously. I would probably recommend using the 31.45 muriatic acid, maybe in a spray bottle, and just spray it on the tile. Pouring it on there, I guess you can do that as well. But, you have danger of splashing it. But just a spray bottle. Of course, use a funnel to pour it in there safely. Just pour a small amount in there and then spray it on the tile. And if you see it start to kind of fizz and bubble a little bit, then you know that it's one type of scale. And I'll go over the different scale types in a minute. And it's the kind that's kind of easy to remove, which you're in luck because there's some topical stuff you can do to remove this one. Now, if you spray it on there and you have zero reaction, this is a much tougher scale to get off. So one of the first ones, the easy one, is calcium carbonate, which can be removed with some topical stuff. Sometimes some elbow grease can get it off. And then you have your calcium silicate, which is on the bottom part of the scale. When you spray the acid on there, there's zero reaction. And that's the harder one to remove, and that's the one that may need a professional glass beading or bead blasting company to remove it. Now, I'll go over the levels here so you can kind of get an idea of what can be cured by the pool service and what can't be cured by the pool professional, and you're going to need outside help. The calcium carbonate has 3 different levels. You have just your standard calcium carbonate. Usually when you have a new pool build, you may have a little bit of this forming, and you can try to remove it with some topical products. Then you have the moderate level of carbonate, which you're going to need some more products and some products in the water as well. And then, of course, you have the heavy carbonate, which, is going to take a little bit more to remove it, and it may not be quite as easy to remove as the, standard beginning of the kind of white haze on the tile. So what I suggest you do when you're starting to see this white line appear is, of course, use the Orenda app and check the LSI of the pool to see how scale forming the water is. This is usually because the pH is too high consistently, with higher alkalinity and high calcium hardness with a rise in water temperature. So if you get the Orenda LSI app and you play with the numbers a little bit, put your numbers in there, and you'll see that it could be scale forming. Then that means that the reason why this white is appearing on the tiles is because there's just too much scale in the water, or the water is scale forming, and the minerals are oversaturated in the water, and they kind of fall out onto the tile line. This happens over time. Even if the pool is perfectly balanced with the LSI, you're going to get some buildup. It's just a natural occurrence when the water evaporates on a tile. There are certain things you can do to prevent it, like I mentioned. The first thing is a topical tile soap. Now, I'll recommend this tile soap, and I'm going to say use it with caution, because you have to be careful you don't spill any of it on the pool deck, nor do you want to spill it on the pool surface itself. So if the water level is really low and you get it on the plaster of the pool, you can actually stain it. You don't want to use it in any kind of pattern design tile, any kind of mosaic tile, because this product does have acid in it, and this is why it's highly effective for the calcium carbonate in the early forms. When it's starting to form on the tile, it becomes really effective. So that is the Biodex 300 tile cleaner. And this is something, again, used with caution because of acid in it. It's very similar to using the Red Arrow tile soap, which I like, by the way. But the Red Arrow tile soap you get at your supplier does have acid in it as well. So use that with caution. Don't spill any on the coping. Treat it like it's muriatic acid, basically, when you're using this product. But it is highly effective with the beginning stages of the calcium buildup. And if you use it with a tile brush and you brush the tile every time you're there at the pool stop, you will notice a difference in the calcium buildup. So it's something to consider, but again, use with extreme caution when you're using this product. Something else you can do when you get a moderate level, there's a couple products you can put in the pool. You can use the Orenda SC-1000. This can be very helpful. It basically seeks out the calcium and metal ions in the water and kind of wraps or chelates them and binds them, and that helps reduce some of the scale. And it also can break down the scale, also like an acid would do. So it's something to consider using in the pool. You also have another product which I like using for descaling, and that's the EasyCare Biodex and ScaleTech. I really like this product as well. It has kind of a similar way of kind of sequestering the calcium. And I prefer using the Biodex and ScaleTech on the actual pool surface when they're scaling. In my opinion, that's where it's more effective. But once you remove the calcium carbonate, using the Orenda SC-1000 will definitely help reduce the potential for buildup. If you use the maintenance dose every week, it's a great preventative way of preventing it from building up on the scale of the pool. And I think the Biodex and ScaleTech, in my opinion, is much better on the actual pool surface. I've used it successfully, when there's a bad startup and it starts to get scale on the surface. It seems to really help lift up underneath there, and you can brush off the scale pretty easily. But for the tile line, I think you would want a topical tile soap as your first line of defense, and then using the SC-1000 in your pool weekly to help the scale from building up. Of course, the LSI needs to be balanced for any of this to be effective. So let's just say that you have a more moderate level of the calcium carbonate buildup on the tile line. In this case, you could use something, you can use maybe a pumice stone. If you have ever used one of these before, it's extremely labor intensive. If you have like a 6-inch tile that you're trying to clean with the pumice stone, it may take you a good 5 minutes, especially if you're leaning over the pool, to get some effect on that particular, white buildup on the tile. It's a extremely long process if you're doing an entire pool and using the pumice stone. It's still an old school method of cleaning the tile, and I would say that it's actually still fairly effective in tile cleaning. In my opinion, it's just very labor intensive, and you don't have maybe some of the same effects you would have, if you do a bead blasting, a complete bead blasting in the pool would be preferable than using a pumice stone to kind of do the entire pool. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. There was a local company that did bead blasting, but they also did something called, I can't remember what they call it technically, but they actually use the box cutter razor blades, the ones that are, double pointed, kind of edged, they have two pointy ends on them, and they use those they wet those and they use that to scrape off the calcium buildup on the tile. And it's actually highly effective, but it's almost as labor intensive as a pumice stone. So you can use a razor blade. It has to be sharp, and so you have to buy a pack of them, and they'll eventually dull after using them on a few tiles, and then you just keep going around the pool with the razor blade. I feel like this is much more effective on the spillway of the pool when you have the really thick white buildup. The razor blade seems to be highly effective, and keep it wet. Maybe have the spillway on. That's a good idea, and kind of dip it in the water and keep scraping it, and that seems to take off the big calcium chunks fairly easily with the razor blade. Just be careful you don't scratch the tile. The best way to prevent from scratching the tile is having the surface wet all the time. And then the other method I've used before is using 400 grit wet and dry sandpaper and lightly rubbing those thick areas that are built up with the calcium carbonate off, and it seems to be highly effective as well. Again, be careful with these products because you may scratch the tile if you're not careful. The razor blade and the sandpaper is much more abrasive than a pumice stone, say, which doesn't normally scratch the tile, but it does take a lot more elbow grease to kind of get the calcium off the tile itself. I've got a really popular video on my YouTube channel with over 31,000 views, and I did this one about 2 or 3 years ago. It's called Remove Calcium from Your Pool. Remove calcium from your pool tile, amazing results, and it's West Coast Tile Cleaning. This is a local company here in Temecula, California, West Coast Tile Cleaning, and the video is called Remove Calcium from Your Pool Tile, Amazing Results, and you'll find it if you just put it in Google. And so this gives you a good idea what bead blasting or glass beading will do to the pool tile line. And in my opinion, if you have a high degree of the calcium carbonate buildup, or if you have, of course, the calcium silicate, then you're going to need the bead blasting. You can scrub for, all your life and not remove any of the calcium silicate. And it's just one of those things where the bead blasting, or the glass beading, I should say, will remove it pretty instantly. It's pretty amazing if you watch the video. It comes off so easily with the way they do the process with the high pressure glass hitting the tile. And you can also do this with baking soda as well. Of course, there's going to be a mess left behind, because if you're using 100 pounds of glass beads or 200 pounds of glass beads, well, then you have to get out that particular weight of glass beads that you use from the pool, and that requires, portable filtration systems, things like that. And it's really slippery on the deck as well. Any leftover residue can be very slippery. So there are a few things to consider: removal of all the glass beads, and some cautions to make sure that the pool area is left clean. Of course, the West Coast Tile Cleaning Service does all that for you, and that's kind of part of the fee that you pay. So that's one reason why there's some, per linear square foot is how they quote you, and every area is different. So I can't give you any quotes here on this podcast, but they're going to measure your pool tile area and quote you per linear foot of how much it would cost to bead blast the entire pool. It could range anywhere from 400 to 800 to 1,000, depending on how big your pool is and how extensive the buildup is. But I can guarantee you that a good bead blasting company will actually restore the tile back to almost to where when you first had the pool built, it looked like brand new tile. Now, again, there are ways to maintain this to keep the tiles from getting the calcium buildup. And the best way, as I mentioned at the beginning, is to keep the LSI in balance and not let it get too far in the scale forming side of the chart. But of course, if all else fails, the bead blasting or glass beading company will remove it, and you just have to, again, have in place preventive methods, the SC-1000. You can use the ScaleTech and Butech if you want to try that product. Cleaning the tile every week while you're there at the pool stop with the Biodex 300 tile soap. You can also use the Hasa Geyser tile soap with acid in there, or the red tile soap, which has acid as well, to help keep the scale from forming on the tiles. Some pool tiles are much more susceptible to scale. I find that small glass tile gets scale a lot quicker than larger porcelain type tiles. Of course, anything stone based like flagstone or a stone tile is going to get the calcium buildup much quicker, and it's much harder to remove it from those stone type tiles. So it's one of those things where when you're choosing a tile for your pool, make sure you're choosing one that you can clean easily, that's not going to get a lot of buildup if that's something you're not looking for. Like if you have black glass tile, I can guarantee you that you're going to have a hard time keeping those scale free because everything shows up on black. If you have a black car, you know that every speck of dirt shows up. So black is probably not, or a darker tile choice is probably not what I would choose for a pool build for that reason if the white calcium bothers you. And there's, of course, other devices you can get to prevent the scale. There's one called the Aquarex water softener, and this uses radio waves, and there is some science behind it. And if you look at the research, it has some really good data backing up the claims that it does reduce the calcium buildup. Of course, I think LSI balancing, removing the calcium, and then using a device like the Aquarex will definitely help prevent the scale from being built up. And you can investigate the science behind it and read about it. But they did have an independent study. It's on their website if you look at the Aquarex website. It's aqua-rex, and then you can see their site. They do have a scientific paper from an independent study. And so something like this may work for you if you're in a situation where you want to try something. You're maybe at your wit's end or rope's end, and you're having all kinds of problem with calcium buildup. Even with a somewhat balanced LSI, if this still is a problem all the time, this may be a solution for you as well. Just investigate it and investigate the claims. I did a video where I actually filmed this thing working, and it worked pretty well in a pool that just had this spa with 2 spillways, and of course hard water is a problem here, and it seemed to be effective. But you can again use the SC-1000. You can use topical tile soap, and you can keep the LSI in balance. And this goes a long way in fighting the buildup. But over the years, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, you may need a professional glass beater, maybe sooner depending on how hard your water is. Every 2 or 3 years you may need to get this done. No matter how well balanced your pool is or how well maintained and how much you clean the tiles, the calcium buildup may just start to build to a point where the glass beading may be necessary. And if you're in the area of Temecula and those surrounding areas, of course, West Coast Tile Cleaning is the company that I highly recommend for you. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a drop-down menu of over 1,800 podcasts, close to 1,900 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by Hasa, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.